drum. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa. Varudrikacharya Astotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Varudrikacharya Astotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindi ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, there's a good chance that we're going to finish this chapter today. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 15th day of February 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still in chapter 7 entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. Reading text 28 on page 340. Yesham Tvantakatam Papam Yesham Tvantakatam Papam Jananam Punyakarmanam Jananam Punyakarmanam Te Dvandvamoha Nirmukta Te Dvandvamoha Nirmukta Bhajante Mam Dridhavataha Bhajante Mam Dridhavataha Yesham Tvantakatam Papam Jananam Punyakarmanam Te Dvandvamoha Nirmukta Bhajante Mam Dridhavataha Yesham Tvantakatam Papam Jananam Punyakarmanam Te Dvandvamoha Nirmukta Bhajante Mam Dridhavataha. Alex, go ahead. Yesham Tvantakatam Papam Jananam punyakarmanam te dvandvanohani mukta Bhajante mam dhudavataha. Glenn, go ahead. Yesham tvantakatum papam Jananam punyakarmanam te dvandvamohani mukta Bhajante mam dhudavataha. Yesham tvantakatum papam Jananam punyakarmanam te dvandvamohani mukta Bhajante mam dhudavataha. I read the word by words. Yesham, whose, to, but, antakatam, completely eradicated, papam, sin, jananam, of the persons, punya, pious, karmanam, whose previous activities, te, they, dvandva, of duality, moha, delusion, nirmuktaha, free from, bhajante, engage in devotional service, mam, to me, dridhabhataha, with determination. Translation. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, gradually, they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwadamahu vimuktehi. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo dwarang yoshitang sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Another very often quoted verse, and these two verses, 27-28, clearly go together. So let's review the previous verse, which I will again mention, or Prabhupada sometimes quotes as the explanation of how we fell into the material world from the spiritual world. Itchadvesha samotena dvandva mohena bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. O Sayana Bharat, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So this delusion of duality, dvandva moha, the delusion, moha, of dvandva. The idea that, that's directly stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I forget the Bengali, but it's Lord Chaitanya's direct teachings. The idea that there's something good and something bad in this material world is a total delusion. It's just the working of the material energy, the modes of nature. And because it happens to displease our senses, we say it's bad. And it pleases our senses, we say it's good. But as Prabhupada would point out, the very same thing that is sometimes bad, we think the next moment is good. He gives an example of cold water. When it's freezing out, you don't want to go swimming in the ocean, it's too cold. But if it's really hot out, the same ocean, maybe even a few degrees hotter, but still cold, is pleasing. So this is the delusion of duality in the material world, and we're constantly faced with those things as we move through each particular body. So that arises from Ichchadvesha, meaning that, as Prabhupada explains it, in the spiritual world, somehow we develop the desire, the Ichcha, to enjoy separately from Krishna. And with that desire comes the abhorrence of serving Krishna. That's the Dvesha. So Ichchadvesha samutena, from that arises the Dvandva moha, the delusion of duality. We become absorbed in the material energy, which is full of dualities. It's called Dvitiya, the second thing, separate from Krishna. And that's also instrumental, Dvandva mohena. So from the delusion of duality, we become completely bewildered. Sammoham. The prefix sam, or san, means completely, as in Sankirtan. There's Kirtan, and then there's Sankirtan, 30, 100, 200 people dancing and chanting in the street. There's Nyas, and there's Sannyas, complete renunciation, you see? So this sammoham means we become completely bewildered. We forget entirely what we really are as spirit souls. We forget all about Krishna, the spiritual world, and we become absorbed. Our mind is absorbed with thoughts of this world. And in that world we go down and down. Sargayanti, we come into creation. Now, how to get out of this bewilderment of duality? First of all, our sins have to stop. Antagatam papam. Now, the papam can also mean sin, but in the purport, Prabhupada mentions about sinful reactions. So, the only way to stop sinful reactions is to stop sinning. And then comes the effort to get rid of the latent reactions from previous sins. And that really only can happen with Krishna consciousness. That's explained in the 6th canto. There is something called prayaschitta, which are various means of counteracting sinful reactions. And you can mitigate them for some time. But the problem is the desire to perform the sins does not leave from that. It's like the elephant's bathing. You may purify yourself, but it comes out of the water and he rolls around on the ground to dry off. So without Krishna consciousness, getting the higher taste and getting the mercy of Krishna to really eradicate those sins, we're bound up, in this chained victimization. You remember that phrase? The chained victimization of action, reaction, action, reaction. So here's giving the formula. Those who, two, you see the word two, very important. The second word is two, it becomes TV there in the Sandhi. On the other hand, those who are sinless, antagatam, their sins have ended, and they're only performing pious activities. Now, pious activities often mean materially pious activities, but here Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains there's different kinds of pious activity, or sukriti. There's Bhogonmukhi sukriti and Bhakti-unmukhi sukriti. Unmukhi means to result in or uncover. So Bhogonmukhi sukriti is pious activity aimed at increasing your material happiness. Krishna will describe that in the 9th chapter. With the aim of going to the heavenly planet. We're just reading about Pachana Barhi in the morning. He's performing all these pious activities, sacrifices with the aim of enjoying later. But there's also Krishna conscious activities. That's the supreme piety. So it's awakening our spiritual life, awakening our attraction to Krishna. And that's what the punya is here. They're performing Krishna conscious activities. Then te dvandva moha nirmukta. You become completely liberated from the delusion of duality. You see that? Moha dvandva. You go back. The delusion of duality. And that means that this famous phrase that comes up again and again, Hare Krishna. Like in the fifth chapter, Hare Krishna, welcome. Okay. That's the lady side. We haven't had a lady here so long, we forgot all about it. Yeah, you can sit there. We are on page 340 in the latter part of the 7th chapter. So can you almost close it? Just leave a little bit. So Krishna is describing here, just to give you heads up where we are, how we came to the material world. Did you ever wonder how we fell from the spiritual world? Everyone wants to know that, right? So one of the ways in which Prabhupada described is in this text 27, the one before we're reading tonight. It's on page 339. I'll just give him a little heads up, See? So, Icha Dvesha Samutena. Icha means desire, and Dvesha means abhorrence. Two opposites. I love it, I hate it. So he says, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by the dualities arisen from desire and hate. So imagine we're in the spiritual world, and the Icha means we develop the desire somehow or other because we're marginal. We are also one of the potencies of Krishna Shakti, called the Tatastha Shakti. In Sanskrit, that it means the Shakti or energy on the margin. That means that we can either agree to be controlled by the internal energy of Krishna and serve him, or we'll turn away from Krishna and we become controlled by the external energy. By nature, we're going to serve. But when we're in the material world, we have the illusion we're masters, and then we get cut down by the time like that. So, but one of it, we're energy, and we're marginal, so we can go either way. It's our free will. So somehow or other, and it doesn't explain how, because that's a mystery, we develop the desire to compete with Krishna rather than serve Krishna. So that's the Icha. And with that desire comes the Dvesha, the abhorrence of serving Krishna. You see? And from that arises our absorption in the material world and the delusion of duality. That this is good, this is bad, this is good. And the criterion of what's good for my senses, what's good for me, like that. Which is constantly in flux. The very same thing that be good today can be bad tomorrow. So it's constantly changing. So that's called the delusion of duality. And we're all bewildered by that, and we come into the material world, and we can stay here for millions and millions of births until we get the clue of how to counteract this delusion of duality. And that's in the verse we're reading today. Yesham dvanta karma papam. The formula is you have to stop performing sins. You have to find out what's sinful and what's not. And so ending the sins, jana punya karma, and performing the activities of bhakti. Punya means pious, in this case bhakti, piety and Krishna consciousness. Then one becomes free from the delusion of duality, dvanda mohanam. And, here's the key, one then worships Krishna, performs bhakti to Krishna with firm determination. Without this formula, you may perform a little, but you won't have firm determination. So that's why we have the four regulative principles, we have the restrictions, as well as the do's and the don'ts. And like in anything. So then, okay, so I haven't read the purport yet. So just to read the translation again, I'll read it. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Okay, actually we did read the purport before. So, Om Jnana Timbarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmitatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Prabhupada is describing here that those who are eligible for regaining the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. If one is sinful, atheistic, foolish, deceitful, it's very, very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. So really, Krishna consciousness is a lifestyle in which one develops one's, how shall I say it, saintly qualities that are conducive to reestablishing our relationship with Krishna, becoming Krishna conscious. Because don't forget, Krishna is in our heart as a super soul. He's seeing everything that we're doing. And if we want to simultaneously try to advance in bhakti, but we want to hold on to our bad habits, he sees that. And he won't give you the blessing of the taste of the things in Krishna consciousness. Just like you've taken some trouble to come to this class tonight. That means there's some interest, somehow there's something going on, right? Some interest in Krishna. That's good, that you want to cultivate that. But it's a million other things you could be doing. And there's millions of people in this city, the larger county, who are doing other things. But the desire to hear about Krishna, to find out who we are, what our relationship is, how can we come to the platform of peace and happiness that doesn't end, is there such a... Those questions arise in the heart of someone who's not engaged and absorbed in all kinds of sinful activities. So that's a very important part of it, and that's what's described here. Before he gets to the point of worshiping me with firm determination, he describes the prerequisites. So, antagatam papam, the sins are ended, jananam punya karmanam, and on the positive side, you're performing pious activities. We know the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy name, trying to come to do some service for the deity, all these different things. There's a whole program described in Prabhupada's books. Then one becomes free from the delusion of duality. Now this is described in previous chapter, in chapter 5, one of the descriptions of one who's come to the point of equipoise. In other words, there's a certain equilibrium that is not subject to, someone may come, like we heard Vijay Prabhu was giving class. It's wonderful having him here. And he goes out every day since 1978. He joined right after Prabhupada left the planet. I knew him in Miami, and back in 83. And he was, from the day one, he was distributing Prabhupada's books. And he's been doing it ever since. He's the international minister for book distribution. And he has all these incredible stories. There was you've heard the story, but this was an amazing one I didn't ever heard before. He's compiled a book full of these accounts, adventures of book distribution. So there's a devotee here, none of you remember him. He was like in the early 90s. And he was called Devaki Nandana. He joined here and he developed and became a book distributor. That's what he wanted to do. And eventually he left. He went to Australia. He got married. Still distributing books. He had a van with his wife and they're traveling around Australia. So he had a dream. I'd never heard this before. He had a dream one night and he related it as part of this book that's coming out. So he's dreaming and somehow he's near the top of a hugely tall building. Like the tallest building in the world, way up. And he's looking out the window and he sees all this brilliant light, and it looks like it's Vaikuntha, and there's Vishnu, and he's looking out, and suddenly Vishnu comes to him, comes on the clouds, and he turns into Krishna, and Devaki doesn't know what's going on, so he turns to the secretary. He's in an office. I forget how it was. I said, "Where am I? What is this?" And it's almost I may be extrapolating. You can correct me. And she sort of checked or something, and she said, "Oh, you're the most fortunate person in the world." Because he's distributing books. It's the most pleasing service to Krishna. That's the whole idea, But I mean, that's just one of the amazing, factors. But that's, you have to be so tolerant. The point by bringing it up, Dvandva Moha, Vijay himself was describing, recently he'd been going out, He discovered SanDiego as a place to distribute books. He'd never really been down here much. He's from L.A. He used to live in L.A. but travel all over the world. So now he came here because of the pandemic and everything. He needed a place to land. LA wasn't suitable. So we made a place for him. He has a place. He wants to make this his center now. So he's been going out to the Balboa Park, Seaport Village, finding different places, So he's set up, and he has all these years of distributing and walking, in airports. His feet have a problem. He can't stand up for too long. So he likes to sit at a table. He has a table and, like sign and everything, and calls people over. He does wonderful. They had a very successful marathon in December. So he describes that he's sitting there, and there's some crazy homeless guy comes. Literally crazy, and he's trying to pick fights with everybody, So he comes over to his table, and he starts pounding on the table, So the way Vijay described it, he didn't freak out, he didn't come roaring at the guy, punch him in the mouth, get into a fist, He's tolerating because he's gone through so much already, describing in the airport, one guy came and started yelling and screaming in his face, and he just calmly watched it and then, let him blow off the steam. And another guy came to Vijay and said, "Let me see that book." Someone who can take that, and do that without getting, disturbed, it's got something going, So that's what this is. Dvandva moha nirmukta. One becomes equipoise and happens in distress and very tolerant. So that's one of the qualities. Dvandva moha nirmukta. And bhajante mam jidavata. Then one can worship Krishna with firm determination, and it requires determination because there's so many impediments, internal and external. Like this pandemic. I mean, how wonderful, the Sunday feast and the festivals and having people in the temple, big kirtans. Yeah, it's a lockdown, and then these masks. I mean, that's the worst part for me, trying to chant with a big mask on. I can hardly breathe properly, you move. So so you have to tolerate. He's saying, well, I can't take it anymore, so I'm going to give it up. You have to tolerate, and there's so many things to tolerate. And it's like training, because after all, we're philosophical. We understand that life is short, even though it may, if you're young, it stretches up so many decades. But I have a view of what a lifetime is like. Of course, in Krishna consciousness, time is even more distorted than outside. It goes a lot faster. It's just like, pretty recently I joined this movement. That was 48 years ago. And so I can see what a lifetime is, at 73. And there's no time to waste. That's the point. And so you have to be determined to become, fixed on advancing. We don't know how much time we have. So we want to become as Krishna conscious as possible, as quickly as possible. So Dvandva Nimakta Bhajante Habjanavata. Now Krishna, Prabhupada gives he quotes from the 5th canto here. And the 5th canto, this is the teachings of Lord Rishabdev. And Lord Rishabdev is actually an incarnation of Krishna. He's a Vishnu Tattva. But he took the role of a king, and now in his teachings are just before he's about to retire. And he's got all of his sons. He's got 100 sons. And he's giving them very important instruction, because they're going to be ruling, and he's going to go and wandering as a mendicant. So the first verse, this is the second verse Prabhupada quotes here, but these verses are very important. So the first verses of the chapter 5, 5th canto, Nayam deho dehabhajang niloke, Krishtan kaman adate vidbhujange, tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam, shuddye yasmad brahmasaukyam tvanantam. So he's giving very strong words here. He's saying that I put this verse based on. I made a little poem, then I'll explain it. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. This is the big contrast between sense gratification and transcendental ananda. Real spiritual happiness doesn't end. It doesn't end. Whereas the pleasures of the senses, they have a beginning and an end. There's no question about it. The limitations are there. And the more extreme the pleasure is, the more extreme reaction is going to be. We all know that. We can see it, and we may have experienced it ourselves. We're not meant for that. That is the binding force here are these desires for enjoying separately from Krishna through the agency of these senses. So what Rishabdev is literally saying is as I mentioned in my little version of it, is that my dear sons, those who have attained the human form of life, and don't forget, there's only all these other forms. Now we have the human form, very rare and meaningful. Nayam deho deha bhajang nirloke. Nirloke means in human community. Krishtan kam arhate vidbhajang. They don't deserve. The first word of the verse is not, means they do not deserve, they shouldn't work very hard just to enjoy beastly happiness, Then what should we do? Tapo divyam putraka, sons, you should perform divine austerity. You should take on voluntary austerity. What for? Why? To purify one's existence. Tapodim putragayena sattvam shuddhyet. Sattvam means your existence, everything that you're experiencing. Shuddhyet means purification. And then what's the value in that? What do I get from that? Saukyam, happiness that doesn't end, transcendental happiness. So this is the mission of human life, is to undergo these austerities. Now, it's in Krishna consciousness compared to previous ages, or even like Orthodox Vaishnav austerities. Prabhupada has made it pretty easy for us. I mean, you can't get around those 4 regular principles: no meat eating, no gambling. To some people, that gambling thing is the most difficult, believe it or not. And I'll tell you why. That's one of the most difficult for everyone. I'll tell you in a minute. But generally speaking, no meat eating and no gambling, that we can do pretty easily. But the other two, we're conditioned to. But that's essential if we want to step into the house of bhakti, as Prabhupada calls it. So how to get the determination to do that? That's described in this verse. One has to give up the sinful activity and to get the strength to continue with that and perform the pious activities. So the chanting of the holy name, the association with devotees who are practicing this and who have the determination and who are manifesting some of that bliss and that determination and that equipoise, that association can inspire you to take on these austerities. They're not impossible. And then you can get a foothold in devotional service and begin worshipping Krishna with great determination. So this verse that Prabhupada refers to, he doesn't quote it, just the first, Mahat Sevam Dvaraha Ahiva Mukte. Mahat Sevam, serving the Mahatmas. Who is a Mahatma? Prabhupada makes it very clear. One who surrendered unto Krishna is a Mahatma. In this chapter, a few verses previously, we had this famous verse, Bahonam Janmanam Ante Jnanamam Mampapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabaha. The last line means, such a person is the rare Mahatma, the great soul. So he's describing, after many, many births of cultivating knowledge, the truly wise soul surrenders unto me, knowing that Vasudeva, that I am everything, through my energies. There's nothing where Krishna isn't. He just described in this chapter, all this earth, this matter that we've experienced all the time, liquids, the air, the gases of all kinds, the light energy, earth, water, fire, air, space, ether, even our mind. We all know we have a mind. We can't see each other's mind, but we have a mind. That's an energy too. Intelligence and ego, these are progressively more subtle. These are all energies of Krishna. And when you think about it, that's what we're experiencing all the time, combinations of these. So, Krishna is here, you see. So the Mahatmas, the great souls, they understand that. They live that reality, meaning they see Krishna everywhere. They are completely in Krishna consciousness. So that's the kind of souls we need to associate with. Now we may say, I don't see anybody like that. I mean, everyone's pretty much like me. But we can associate through Prabhupada's books, This is the most important type of association, through the words. Even I listen to Prabhupada lectures every day, It's good to get over the hump of because they're all available, but he has certain accent many people can't understand at first. But with a little effort, you can hear him. Then you can hear the pure devotee speak. And there's, of course, a certain quality to the voice. There's even a purport about this in the 4th canon. We read it recently. That the spiritual master, the pure devotees, their voice has a certain quality. And it's because they're within those words and the sound of the voice, they're carrying the saffron mercy particles from the lotus feet of Krishna. I swear. And they easily enter into the heart and have a deep effect. So that's what this word Mahat Sevam, by serving the Mahatmas, and the most important service is listening to them. Reading Prabhupada's books, and you can listen to them, chant, bhajan, and of course speak the lectures. Dwaram ahu vimuktes, one becomes free from the dualities. Ahu vimukte, one opens the door to liberation. What is liberation? Now this is an important point. Certain the impersonalists think that liberation means getting free from a body and a form and merging back into Brahman. That real liberation is just this prayer. I don't know if you remember Nirvishesha Sunyavadi. You've heard before. That Nirvishesha it means no details, no variety. That the ultimate reality is just the white light, Brahman. And what's the benefit? No more birth, no more death, no more disease, no more old age. But it's all no, 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 no. There's no dancing with Krishna. There's no flute. Nothing. It's just like a negative thing. But we're saying no. That's not what real liberation is. Even if you're able to go there, because there's a reality like that, Brahman effulgence, but you'll never be satisfied because you yourself are a person, an eternal person. We have a spiritual body and everything, which is covered now. And so after, relishing, not having to take birth and no pain, then you want to do something, So you come back down. You fall down again to this world, and maybe you open hospitals and do something. There's a verse like that. So, what is real liberation according to Vaishnava Shastra, Bhagavatam? Muktir hitva anyata rupam swarupena vivastiti. Now I know the Sanskrit is a little tough, I'll explain it. Mukti is liberation, real mukti. Hitva anyata rupa means giving up other forms like this one. I mean, as we go through life, our form is constantly changing. We have so many bodies just in this lifetime, right? A little child's body, adolescent body, right? Go on. So that's form, plus all the other different forms we can take, different animal forms, plant forms. Giving all those up, getting free from that. Hitva means giving up, and being situated in one's swarup. Swarup means your original eternal form that we gave up many, many eons ago from the spiritual world. We have a form just suitable for serving Krishna. It may be a gopi's form. It may be a gopa's form. It doesn't matter what the gender is right now. It could be a cow, But whatever it is fully conscious. It's fully conscious. It's not that, I'm just a cow. How did I get this body here? No, you'll be fully satisfied in that. So that's Swarup. That's what mukti is. It includes freedom from birth, old age, disease, and death. That's not even the motivation, Everyone, that's a big thing, to get free from birth and death. But that shouldn't be our prime motivation. It can be a very important impetus to take up the process of devotional service. But at a certain point, you get so much pleasure out of serving Krishna that you forget about liberation. And even you come to the point of Lord Chaitanya where he says, Mama janmani janmani shure. Let me take birth again and again. Janmana means birth, I don't want any money, I don't want any beautiful spouse, I don't want anything from available on higher planets. No. Nadanam, nasundanim, kavitam, vajagadish. Mama janmani janmani shure. What does I want? Bhavatad? Bhaktira hoitakitvahi. Unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to you. That is so pleasing to the soul. So much ananda that you said, I don't care. Hell or heaven, I don't care. As long as I can serve you and be in that mood, you see. So that includes mukti, is completely there. So mahatsevam dwara mahava muktis tamo dvam yoshitang sangi sangam. So we have a choice. We can serve the Mahatmas, listen to them, and that'll open the door to liberation, or we can serve the materialists, those who are completely absorbed in the sinful activity, and that'll open up the door to hell, to suffering, great suffering. So who is the Mahatma? That continues. Mahantas te samachitta. They're the real Mahatmas or Mahantas, same word. They're equipoised, prashanta, completely peaceful. Mahantas te samachitta prashanta vimanya vaksuridak sadavoye. They're completely free of envy. They're friends to all, and they're pure devotees. So whom we choose to associate with is a large part of our what forms our consciousness. That's why there's something called satsang. It's an English word by now. It's totally ended. It's based on the word sadhu sangha, association with great saints and sages. And that's what this whole movement is about. Prabhupada worked so hard to establish temples like this so we could come together and gain strength from each other. If we're all alone out there trying to chant Hare Krishna, we'll never make it. But if we come together, have kirtan, listen, perform festival service together, we can get the strength to do it. Okay, something I haven't done before. Are there any questions here or there? Are you with us, Tapas? Maybe not. He's not always there. We have the Zoom, kind
Yes,
of.
Prabhu.
All right. So we've done one verse. Are there any questions or comments?
I don't see any questions or comments in YouTube.
Okay, then let's go. We'll go on to the next verse. We have a local question, please, Alex. Alex, number 2. Oh yeah. Wait a minute. We're gonna activate the mic. Yeah. Usually we have no questions. They never ask any questions. So. Thank you, Alex. Number 1. We have to give a nickname for one of you. I don't know who's going to be. Go ahead. What is it, Prabhu?
So for somebody...
Hold it up.
Is it?
Yeah, Tom.
Can you hear? Okay. So for somebody who's like newer in the movement, I've noticed like with my friends and stuff, sometimes they'll it's hard for them to get motivation to chant, or they'll chant some rounds, or they'll chant a round, and then they'll feel exactly the same after.
Yeah.
So to someone who's like going through that, what are some advice you can give, like how to motivate yourself to chant your rounds?
Yeah. The first thing is kirtan.
Kirtan.
Kirtan, yeah. I just heard that, probably, you listen to these lectures over and over, and he's answering all the questions. So he says, this is how I started. He described how he started everything. He went out to the park. He called it Tompkinson's Park, it's Tompkins Square Park. I was living there 2 years later, 668, 2 blocks from Tompkins Square Park. Anyway, so he would go there with a couple of the early people from 26 Second Avenue. I don't know if you know the story, but it was difficult to start. So he had this little half a bongo drum. You know the bongo drums? You have to think. So he had one half of a bongo drum. That's all he had. No mangdangas, nothing. And he called it a dundubi. It's like so it also has a dundubi. And he went out there with a couple of devotees, and he sat in the park, and he started banging on that dundubi and chanting Hare Krishna for 3 hours, from 2 to 5 in the afternoon. Now, especially if it's a weekend, there's all kinds of people come through the park. And in those days, there was a lot of curiosity about the hippies and things like that. So it was another event, and people would gather. So he says, yes, and these young people would come, and they had their dogs, and they had their babies, So he's chanting. And after some time, a couple of the guys, I don't know if they were told to, or they just spontaneously got up and started dancing. And some other people started dancing, and he said that's how it all started, So after 3 hours of chanting, then Prabhupada got up, and famously he stood by this tree, which is still there. There's a memorial on it. Yeah, he stood there and he gave a little talk about what they were doing, and he invited some people to come back to the temple, and a few people did. They were more curious. So the idea is that, japa is great, but it's hard to have only japa. The mind is too disturbed. But kirtan is naturally, especially if you have nice music, nice beat. The drums are so important, We're very fortunate to have Alex, number one here. In a flash, he became an expert drummer. His previous life, no doubt about it. So have a kirtan. Find out a kirtan, even indoors or somewhere, or go out in the park and, just simple kirtan, whatever you can do. And that'll, there's something called Taurya Trikena. And that is the Trikena means three things that are more in the material world are really aspects of Maya. And that is, and if you think about it, singing and dancing and playing musical instruments. They can be a very powerful form. Think of all the raves and the bars and everything. So those very 3 things Lord Chaitanya took as the essence of the moving of the Sankirtan: playing music and dancing and singing. But what you're singing, that's the key, and it's the holy name, the Hare Krishna mantra. So after 20 minutes, 30 minutes of kirtan, and if someone get drawn into that, there will be some taste, there will be some experience. This is what Prabhupada showed in the 26 Second Avenue. Invited the people come, they came, we would chant for an hour generally. You don't hear that on the lectures, the lectures afterward, but everyone's primed, after that, a certain number are ready to hear. What did I just experience, What was that, And so they have to go together. So your friend, you say, let's have a little kirtan, play a little drum, whatever. Everyone could clap, even just clapping, and sing, and sing in response. So people get to hear and they chant, And because of the music and because of the experience, it's easier to absorb the mind in that holy name. Otherwise, if it's just you and a holy name, the mind is too powerful. And then the two go together. When the mind is pacified after chanting, and you hear a little philosophy, then say, hey, let me do this. This sounds like this is an important thing to do. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Start with 2 rounds, a day. You know, I have so many beads. If you want beads, I'll give you some beads. But I mean beads for your friends. You know, you can. Yeah. If you come tomorrow, we have class. I'll bring a bunch of beads. And you can. Yeah. But that's the way to do it. Kirtan, you know, and little talk. You can read a book out loud. You know, from one of the books, and then a little trying out the japa, and then it comes. And then prasadam. You know, those guys to go to that. All right. Shall we go on? Let's go on. Text 29. Oh, yes, Haribo.
So, Prabhu, we have a question on the YouTube. So, it's from the Rakhi Mataji. She said, Hare Krishna, does the Atma will still be inside the spiritual form even after we achieve spiritual form?
Okay, your accent is a little thick, but I think I understand it. That when we have our spiritual form, will the Atma still be inside? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Yeah, no. Prabhupada explains it. I hear everything. You listen to these lectures. The question came up from someone. The question is like, in this material world, we understand there's spirit and there's matter, and we have the material body and casing. Well, what is it like in the spiritual world? Are we still? That was the question. Are we still 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair? You know, we're still very minute. You know. So Prabhupada said, yes, that's our constitutional position, but just as in the material world, spirit can expand through matter. There's a verse like that. Pervading our each body that we inhabit is our consciousness. The soul is in one spot, but it pervades the consciousness. Similarly, in the spiritual world, we're still the Atma, but we expand in spirit. Our body is pure spirit. And there's not the duality of quality between the spirit and the matter, that's the body. There's no duality there. And in Krishna's body there's no Atma. It's all spirit. You know what I mean? There's no duality there. Krishna, there's no difference between, there's even a verse, Deha Dehi Vibhago Yam Neshure Vijate Kuchit. There's no difference between the Dehi, the occupier of the body, and the Deha when it comes to Krishna. He's solid spirit. So, but we also will be solid spirit there. Our body will be pure spirit. It's not like here where there's a duality between the soul and the body. Okay, can I go on?
So does it mean that in the spiritual world, when we get spiritual body, we will not have any mind?
Will not what?
We will not have mind, intelligence.
No. We have a spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, spiritual hands. No, we have all those things. What we have now is a perverted reflection of the spiritual reality. You know, like our senses, of sight. You know, we can see certain things, but it's all limited. But in the spiritual world, we'll have the beautiful insight. All right, I better go on. We'll try to finish. Well, not tonight. We'll finish tomorrow. This chapter. Okay, 29. Jara manana mokshaya mama shritya yatanti he te brahmadan vidhu krishnam adhyatmam karma chakilam. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. Purport. Birth, death, old age, and diseases affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body, so one who attains a spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service. So one who attains the spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. This is the first Sanskrit phrase I ever learned when I joined the temple. Aham Brahmasmi, I am pure spirit. It's good to know. I am spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in devotional service, as described in this verse. The pure devotees are transcendentally situated on the Brahman platform, and they know everything about transcendental activities. 4 kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in the transcendental service of the Lord achieve their respective goals. And by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman-realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman. Did you get that the place? I'm sorry. You got it? It's in the purport 29, near the bottom of 341. She got it. Yeah. Even the less intelligent Brahman-realized person cannot reach the supreme planet. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, means taking full shelter of me, are actually entitled to be called Brahman, because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshipping the form of Archa, that's the deity on the altar, form or Archa of the Lord, or who are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know, by the grace of the Lord, the purports of Brahman, Adibhuta, etc., as explained by the Lord in the next chapter. Okay, so Prabhupada is anticipating the next verse, which calls of Adibhuta. So, Jara Manana Mokshaya. Now this is this comes up constantly. Here, Krishna is giving the one of the things that we aspire for, that are valuable about surrendering to Him, becoming liberated from old age and death. Jara Manana Mokshaya. So that's liberation. Mama Shritti Yatantiye. They take shelter of me. They surrender to me. In other words, you can approach Krishna with the desire for liberation, but the way to approach Krishna is through devotional service. And once you start performing devotional service, that aspiration for liberation wanes, because you already feel liberated, even in this body, And you say, "Who cares?" Or you say like a wonderful verse in the Krishna Karnamrita. This is a book that Lord Chaitanya brought back from South India when he was touring, and he loved the book so much he had it copied and brought it back. So near the end of the book, he has a verse that describes a pure devotee's relationship, if you will, with liberation, moksha. So he says, "My dear Lord, bhaktis tvayis chidatara bhagavan hyadisyad daivena nakpalati divya kishora murti mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman dharma takama gatayak samaya patiksha." So there he's referring there to these 4 goals, general goals in Vedic culture. They're known as Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Dharma has different meanings. In this particular context, probably translated as not so much religion, real dharma, but religiosity. In other words, these are rituals that you perform, and they're in the Vedas, but they're in a certain part of the Vedas that teach you how to perform rituals to go to heaven, heavenly planets, to enjoy, great. So that from the Dharma you perform, and there's all kinds of rules and regulations, you'll get Artha, material benefit. Artha here means money. And with that Artha, you'll be able to enjoy Kama, different kinds of sense gratification. Okay, and then after you get tired of that and you realize you're just keeping you bound in birth and death, you desire moksha. Dharma, Artha, Kama, moksha. Liberation. But here Bilvamangal Thakur is saying that if one performs steady and sincere devotional service to you, my Lord, bhaktis tvayi, unto you, sthiratata, determined and fixed devotion, Bhagavan, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, yadisyad, if one does that, then what happens is, daivena nakpalati divya kishora murti, one gets a vision of your beautiful adolescent form, Shyama Sundar playing the flute, and all thoughts of mukti and artha, they go away. And as far as mukti is concerned, she's standing at the door with the Anjali mudra. There's a big thing with mudras in Vedic culture. Just like Radharani, you've seen the deity here, right? So this is a mudra. It's called Abhaya Dan, the gift of fearlessness. Don't worry, everything's going to be all right. Very important. So there's another mudra, this one, where you have periodically. Have you ever seen a Pushpanjali? And Pushpanjali is a ceremony we do when we have an appearance or disappearance of one of our great acharyas, Srila Prabhupada or Bhaktisiddhanta Bhaktivinoda Thakur or the others. So we'll gather at before noon, and we have so many flower petals. And we say all these mantras, and then at the end we offer them. Pushpanjali, Pushpanjali. So this is a mudra for service, There's something in here. It's not like this, praying, There's nothing, please give me this, please give me this. No, it's, what can I offer? You see the difference? That's very important. So he said, Mukti herself, this is the personification, she's at the doorway saying, how can I serve you? In other words, if you're fixed in Krishna consciousness, everything you need in terms of mukti is already there. And as far as artha and kama and moksha, artha and kama, they're also waiting, In other words, you need something to live, you'll get it. You get that, So Krishna provides. So here Jana Madana Moksha, but here it says those who are after liberation from old age and death, is liberation, they take full shelter of me. So what gives? Now we're back to at the beginning of our quest for enlightenment. There was a book we had like that. The desire for liberation is very important. It means that you have to understand there's this inevitable thing that happens if you have a material body called death. Old age, I'm experiencing old age, I'm trying to ward it off various things. But it's coming. And so that's inevitable. You have two choices. You can die prematurely, or you can go through old age, disease, and death. Take your. Great. That's it. So, and then rebirth, which we've forgotten, but that's not pleasant either. So you have birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age. So, Krishna, they would say, well, Krishna consciousness will help you end that. You'll be able to get rid of that. Okay, great. Now, along the way, you find out that there's a spiritual pleasure coming. With it, and eventually you say, I don't care about mukti, but it's good. All right, what we're going to do is tomorrow we'll read this verse again and the last one. I'm sorry I went over time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.